So today, second video, I want to ask a question. Do you know what the new covenant is? And who it's for? Have you embraced the new covenant? Or are you in violation of the new covenant? Will there be nations who embrace the new covenant, and will there be nations who violate the new covenant? Well, before I get started, I want to remind everybody that I'm wearing the clothing of shame, the yellow clothing of shame that Christianity, the Crusaders, forced the Jews to wear for nearly 2,000 years. From the Crusades all the way to the Holocaust. Yes, these Christians, in the name of Jesus, pillaged, raped, murdered, and burned at the stake the brethren of the Messiah, the least of his brethren. They did this. And I say, first of all, I wear the clothing of shame and the yellow star to honor those who the Christians murdered throughout the ages, and may those children of Abel get vengeance upon the children of Cain. So, let me go straight to Psalm 25. The Psalm of David. You know, Messiah, the son of David, will take the kingdom of David, will accept it from our Father who is now in heaven, but soon to be on the earth. And so, what David said is what the Messiah will say. Unto you, O Jehovah, do I lift up my soul. O my Elohim, I trust in you. Let me not be ashamed. Let not my enemies triumph over me. Yes, let none that wait upon you be ashamed. Let them which transgress without cause, or let them be ashamed who transgress without a cause. Show me your ways, O Jehovah, teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the Elohim of my salvation. On you do I wait all day long. Remember, O Jehovah, your tender mercies and your loving kindness, for they have always been since the old days. Now, of course, this is David speaking here in verse 7. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to your mercy, remember me for your goodness' sake, O Jehovah. Now, folks, you must understand that this verse 7 is a part of the new covenant. And I asked, do you embrace the new covenant, or have you violated the old covenant? Continue on. I will continue on, and I will explain to you what I mean. Again, verse 7. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions. According to your mercy, remember you me. For your goodness' sake, for his righteousness' sake, O Jehovah. Good and upright is Jehovah, therefore he will teach the sinners his way. The meek he will guide in justice, and the meek he will teach his way. All the paths of Jehovah are mercy. Notice how that word mercy always comes up in this whole psalm. That's where I'm getting at, folks. Mercy and truth unto such as keep his covenant and his testimony. Again, what is that covenant? What is that new covenant? Verse 11, for your name's sake, O Jehovah, pardon my iniquity, for it is great. This is the King of Israel saying this. And since David was the king of Israel, he represented all 12 tribes of Israel. And in the context of this psalm, he mentions that covenant. You see. Verse 12, what man is he that fears Jehovah? Him shall he teach in the way that he shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. The secret of Jehovah is with them that fear him, and he will show him his covenant. So we're seeing mercy, pardon, and covenant mentioned many times in the psalm. Why? Because all three go hand in hand. My eyes are ever toward Jehovah, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. Today, Israel's feet are in a net. They are in a pickle. Turn unto me and have mercy upon me, for I am desolate and afflicted. The people of Israel have been desolate and afflicted for the past 2,000 years. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. Oh, bring me out of my distresses. He promised that after the 77s are complete. He promised it by sending Gabriel the message in Daniel 9. Look upon my affliction and my pain and forgive all my sins. As the king of Israel, David represented all Israel. So this is for Israel's sake. Verse 19, consider my enemies, for they are many, and they hate me with a cruel hatred. Yes, we saw 128 nations around the world exposed by their hatred for Israel just a few days ago. Verse 20, oh, keep my soul and deliver me, and let me not be ashamed. There's coming a time when Israel will no longer wear the clothing of shame. Let me not be ashamed, for I put my trust in you. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on you. Redeem Israel, O Elohim, out of all of his troubles. So, what we have here in this Psalm 25 is mention of the covenant, pardoning of all the iniquities of Israel's King David, him representing Israel, saving them from their enemies, instituting the everlasting covenant, the new covenant, for who? For Israel. You see, folks, the covenant is about Israel's redemption, as it is in verse 22. Jeremiah 31. Starting in verse 31. Behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. You cannot remove Israel or Judah from that equation and put somebody else's name in there. Those names, the house of Israel and the house of Judah, each and every one of the 12 tribes, including Dan, must be in there, in that equation. That new covenant, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in that day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they broke, although I was a husband to them, saith Jehovah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel and the house of Judah after those days. After what days? After the days of wrath on Israel are finished, as Gabriel told Daniel in Daniel 9, after the 77s are finished. And I have proven over and over and over and over and over and over countless times in my past videos that the 77s of Daniel 9 are finished. There is no more time left. Which means it is time for the new covenant to be reinstituted upon Israel and for Psalm 25 to commence. Verse 33, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith Jehovah, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people, and they shall no more teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them, the least of Israel, to the greatest of Israel, saith Jehovah. Why? Because he's going to punch them in the mouth? Is that what it says? No. No, because he's going to forgive their iniquity. He's going to answer that prayer of Psalm 25 and redeem Israel. That is how they are going to believe, when he forgives their sins and forgives their iniquity and remember their sins no more. And Paul, in the book of Hebrews, underscores that truth, the gospel. This is the gospel. This is the new covenant. And I have said in videos about a year and more ago that any gospel that does not include the salvation of Israel, that gospel is a false gospel. And again, I ask you, do you keep the covenant and the testimony of Jehovah and Yeshua? Do you? If you believe in replacement theology, you have rejected that covenant. If you think that in any way that somehow a church replaces Israel, you are an unbeliever. You stand with the opposer of Israel. So let us go to Paul's words in Hebrews. Is it Hebrews 8? Let me see if I can remember that. In verse 7, for if the first covenant had been faultless, there should no place be sought for a second. You see, the first one was temporary. The new covenant is the everlasting covenant written about in the book of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and all the prophets. And while Paul underscores this, John in the book of Revelation also underscores it. I will get to that in a minute. Verse 8, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Jehovah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. After what days? After the 77s of Daniel 9 are fulfilled. And once again, in many of my videos, I have proven over and over and over again that the 77s of Daniel 9 were fulfilled in the summer of 2016 on the Roman calendar. And then there had to be a jubilee afterward. Once that jubilee ended in the summer of 2017, there was no more time left. And then we had to look to a particular date in Haggai. Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22. The 24th day of the 9th month, which was the first day of Hanukkah. That day was a marker. Did anything happen on that day? No. But something happened the day after, because it is written in Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22, from that day and upward. In other words, it begins with that day and it continues from that day. The very next day, President of the United States, Donald Trump, finally obeyed the law of the land in the United States and decreed that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. And the embassy will be placed there in accordance with the command in Zechariah 14, so as not to be in violation of the new covenant. And then, yesterday, Guatemala followed suit, declared that Jerusalem is Israel's capital, and that they will be putting their embassy, their tabernacle, their Sukkot in Jerusalem so as not to be in violation of the new covenant, and received a wrath that is going to be poured out upon the nations as written in Zechariah 14. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. Did Paul say the church? No, he didn't. No, Paul read word for word what came out of the mouth of Jeremiah the prophet. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel, not the house of the church, the house of Israel. After those days, yes. Says Jehovah, I will put my laws into their mind and write it in their hearts, and I will be to them an Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me from the least unto the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities I will remember no more. Granting the request of King David in Psalm 25, and Paul reading word for word from Jeremiah the prophet, stating that this is that covenant that anyone who's a believer must embrace. And if you do not embrace that covenant, if you say that the covenant is not for Israel, then you have just disqualified yourself from the new covenant, and you have disqualified yourself from all the blessings in that new covenant. What is that blessing? That blessing is to go in your past and to forgive all those dirty things you did in your past. You reject that new covenant, that means all those nasty things you did in your past are going to be exposed and brought up. You will be brought up to the judgment seat and you will be exposed for what you have done. Now, if you embrace the new covenant, all of those evil things you did in your past will be blotted out, will be forgiven as if it never happened. Now, which do you prefer? Each and every one of us has done foul things in the past that we would like to be forgotten forever. Have we not? Embrace that new covenant, and it will happen. That is a guarantee. I'd stake my life on it. Now, what is written in Revelation? I believe it's 10 verses. I hope I can remember this, because this is very important. Yes. This is at the time when the seven thunders were uttered, and John was told not to write down the seven thunders. Verse 5, and the angel that I saw stand on the sea and upon the earth, in other words, he was standing, had 1 foot on the Mediterranean Sea and 1 foot probably in Israel, lift up his hand to heaven and swore by him to live forever, who created heaven and earth, that things that are therein, and the earth and the things that are in, and the sea and the things that are therein, that it should be no longer, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel. So when the seventh angel sounds, there will be time no longer. The mystery, so when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of Jehovah should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. Now, you didn't see it, did you? You didn't see it. Why? Because the translation is wrong, folks. You saw part of it, where it says, the mystery of Jehovah should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. Who were the prophets? Does Jeremiah ring a bell? Does Jeremiah 31, verse 31 and onward, does that ring a bell? Let's ring another bell here. Let us go to Strong's Concordance. And let us see where the translators went wrong in Revelation 10 and verse 7. All right. But in the days, that's all correct, of the voice, that's correct, of the seventh angel, that is correct, when he is about to sound. That is all correct. The mystery, that is correct, of Jehovah to bring to an end, teleo, like a telescope, will finally begin to come to an end as declared. Declared? Declared? Oh, folks. 2097. Evangelido. I can't say it. I'm sorry. What does it mean? To announce good news. Okay? So let's stop right here and let us look up what the word gospel means. Gospel. Gospel. Dictionary.com, folks. Get ready for this. Old English Godspell or gospel, glad tidings. What is glad tidings? It's good news. And I just saw it here. I'll just go. Here's what I'll do. I'll go to Bible Hub, and I'll go to Strong's Concordance, and I'll look up gospel, and you will see it's the same word. I'll show you. Just hold on. Don't get bored. I'll go to the first one, 1 Corinthians 9:18. First one I see. Go to Strong's. Well, they have the wrong word here. Pistuo, to believe and entrust. All right, let's try another one. We'll try 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 2. Oh, here we go. Evangelion, good news. So, what is the gospel that Paul was preaching? Well, according to John, in Revelation 10 and verse 7, that gospel was what was declared to his servants, the prophets, Jeremiah, and therefore, and remember, Paul underscored Jeremiah's gospel. Yes, Jeremiah preached the gospel. The good news. What is the good news? The good news, the gospel is once again, which should I do? Should I go to Hebrews 8? Yeah, I'll go to Hebrews 8. Because some of you who refuse to listen to the prophets, you got no choice but to listen to Paul. So this is the gospel, folks. Learn to love it And all of those who reject this new covenant for Israel, you have rejected the gospel, and you will lose out on what is written in the gospel, what is written in the new covenant: forgiveness of sin. For if the first covenant had been faultless, verse 7, there should no place have been sought for the second, for finding fault with them, with finding fault with Israel. He said, behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Nowhere is the church mentioned here. For not according to the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day when I took them out of the land, by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, so I regarded them not, says Jehovah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. After the days of rejection come the days of reconciliation. Believe it. It comes reconciliation, the days of reconciliation, the days of redemption that David asked for in Psalm 25. For this covenant will I make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Jehovah. I will put my laws into their mind, and will write them in their hearts, and will be them to them an Elohim, and they shall be to me a people, and they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me, from the least to the greatest. Why? Why are they going to know him from the least to the greatest? Why? Because I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities I will remember no more. And so the new covenant makes the old covenant old and dead. If you do not embrace this gospel as Jeremiah wrote, as Yeshua Messiah spoke of, coming to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, if you do not embrace the gospel as Paul reiterated with the words of Jeremiah and the words of Hebrews in the script of Hebrews 8, and if you do not embrace the new covenant, the gospel, the good tidings that John spoke of in the book of Revelation that was revealed to the prophets, especially Jeremiah, then your sins cannot be forgiven. And all of those nations who voted against Jerusalem being Israel's capital are in violation of the new covenant. All of those who abstained, refused to embrace the new covenant, and all those nations who didn't show up, they didn't show up for the new covenant. The ones who voted against the United Nations have rejected the world's rejection of the new covenant. Those who are going to put their embassy in Jerusalem have accepted the new covenant. Now, the United States has promised that they are going to put their embassy in Jerusalem. I hope they follow through. Guatemala, and hopefully they will also their sins and iniquity won't be remembered anymore. The sins and iniquity of the United States. And Guatemala has also gone against the world and said, no, Jerusalem is Israel's capital. And they will put their embassy in Jerusalem. And thereby doing that, they have accepted, embraced the new covenant. And there's a promise of forgiveness of sin. There's plenty of sin in Guatemala. There's plenty of sin in the United States. But the acceptance of the new covenant gets you what is written in the last verse of Psalm 25. Redemption. Forgiveness of sin as written in Hebrews 8 and verse 12. That's what the acceptance of the new covenant for Israel gets you. And it baffles me. It baffles me that the world insists on exposing everyone else's sins, and in doing so, they expose their own and condemn themselves. It is the most amazing thing. I'm flabbergasted. At this point, folks, I really don't know what else to say. I've said all that can be said here concerning the new covenant. You either embrace it or you reject it. If you embrace the new covenant, your sins will be forgiven. If you reject it, you will be brought forth to judgment. And the judgment will be heavy. Why not embrace the new covenant? Why not? Bitter hatred and worshiping of the devil is what causes this. Hatred. Like I said, I don't know what else to say. I think that I have said all that needs to be said about this, and the only thing that's going to be left now, folks, is since the nations have decided that they want Israel to wallow in its sin and the consequences of the sin, then the nations must now, those who voted against Israel, those who voted against Jerusalem, must now bear the consequences of all the sins of their past. All those sins must now be exposed, brought out into the fore, and shoved in their faces now. And plagues must commence upon them for all those crimes, for all the blood that's been shed in their land. Now that must happen. There's no turning back now. They have exposed themselves. They have laid their cards on the table. The only thing left now for those who want judgment is judgment.